What? Jake grimaced, looking past her out the bedroom window to the mist drifting past the trees, their branches black and leafless. Fire. Bad one. Trumbull already responded, and Munhall and McKeesport are on their way. Jin gasped. Gus thinks we'll lose the Archer place. Jake grabbed for the shirt at the edge of the bed and pulled it on, buttoning it with practiced motions. The roof's about to go, and the fire's in both floors. Shock was followed by dismay. Over the summer, Jake had bought a parcel of land up on a ridge overlooking the river, a quarter-mile out of town, when the elderly woman who owned it died and her estate was split up. He'd worked hard to get it permitted for 3 large houses of his own design, a project he'd been dreaming of for years. He'd put his best crew on the job, and they'd worked feverishly through the fall, Jake putting on his tool belt along with the rest of them, doing the work he preferred by far to the business aspects of running a growing construction company. The land had been a good deal, but the bank had its doubts. The houses Jake proposed building were larger and grander than anything that had been built in Trumbull for decades. Jake was convinced that wealthy Pittsburgh families, especially the new denizens of the burgeoning tech economy, would be willing to make the half-hour commute to the city in exchange for the stunning views of the river, the nearby trails and forests, and the quaint downtown that was enjoying a fledgling renaissance. But most lenders couldn't get past Trumbull's reputation as a former steel town that had been plagued for decades by unemployment, crime, and poverty. In the end, Jake had been forced to put up much of his own money to get the project off the ground, pouring nearly every penny of his savings into it. Jin knew that the future of his company depended on the successful completion and sale of the 3 homes. She had visited the site 6 times at various stages of construction, basking in the pleasure of Jake's quiet pride as he pointed out the details of design and construction, the thoughtful nuances and distinctive, deceptively simple lines that had defined his reputation as a builder. She had believed in him before the first shovelful of dirt was dug, and her confidence only grew as the homes began to take shape. The first of the houses had already been sold. Leon Archer was a consumer products executive who'd just gotten a very expensive divorce from his Philadelphia socialite wife. The quiet life he'd publicly stated he intended to pursue in Trumbull, according to the local gossip, was really a refuge to stash his mistress and their baby until the worst of the scandal had passed. Jin had never met the couple, but she knew Jake had spent many hours honing the details of the plans to Archer's exacting specifications. The house was meant to be spectacular, a showpiece that would bring more business Jake's way, and money into Trumbull as well. "You're insured?" Despite her efforts, Jin's small voice came out sounding more like a question than a statement. After all, they'd never discussed it. Jake kept the details of his company close to the vest. Jake shrugged miserably. "I mean, insurance isn't going to make me anywhere close to whole. The value wasn't in the land, the raw materials. It was more about the vision. That was my toe in the door, you know? Selling the dream. Archer's not going to want to wait around for me to rebuild from the ground up. That baby's due any day now. And without him in the picture, how am I supposed to talk anyone into buying a half-finished house with a burnt-out wreck next door?" Jin knew what he wouldn't say. Jake had counted on the lure of Archer's quasi-celebrity to bring buyers for the other 2 homes, while there was still time to modify the plans with expensive finishes and enhancements that would drive the selling prices up. He had hoped to build one-of-a-kind homes that not only were nearly as large and impressive as the first, but would showcase his distinctive style and drum up more business down the road. This was supposed to be the project that would finally let him focus on the work he loved every day, that would allow him to turn down the less desirable projects he took just to keep his crew employed and pay the bills. Demolition work, insurance jobs, commercial, and infrastructure. Jake had spent many years bidding on everything that came along just to stay afloat. But if the prospect of Pittsburgh royalty living right next door evaporated, there would be little to lure the kind of wealthy buyers from the city who would pay a premium for a Crosby home. Jin knew that practically the only family in Trumbull that could afford such a house was her own, and Madeline and Richard Sullivan would never leave the old steel magnate's mansion on Hyacinth Lane in which they'd raised their family. "Be careful," she blurted, as Jake grabbed his boots from the closet. "I will," he said, but he didn't look back before heading downstairs. Jin spent the next hour drinking